My dear friends, thank you for this wonderful party tonight in my honor. And look, I am wearing my favorite dress, a dress that has been locked up by government decree for 10 years. And tomorrow, my 3 children and I are going to leave St. Augustine, probably never to return. So I am so glad to have this chance to thank you for all you have done for me. My husband, Manuel de Sandoya, was given the commission by the Crown to be governor of Florida for 5 years, starting when we arrived in St. Augustine, and charged with building the first permanent fort. Oh, we were so happy to get our things together and take that long ship's voyage to the New World. We landed in Veracruz. And then, instead of taking a smaller ship up the coast to St. Augustine, my husband decided to go to Mexico City. Was I ever happy about that? You know, Mexico City is the most beautiful city I have ever seen. It has long, wide avenues separated by parks. It has beautiful homes and buildings, and the court in Mexico City is the equal of the one I enjoyed in Spain. We were there for 7 months. Now, the reason we went is my husband knew the men who would approve his plans for the fort were there, and so was the treasurer who would give him the money to build it. And he met with them, and they said, approved everything he wanted. But it took 7 months, and our personal funds were very low. And so, as was the custom, we borrowed against the St. Augustine soldiers' payroll, and we put my 2-year-old son, Pedro, into the army. His little salary would help repay the loan, and it was a common practice, as you know. We finally arrived in St. Augustine, and it seemed to me that the entire town came down to greet us. And what I couldn't understand was wherever I went, crowds of people followed me. And then I learned they had never seen a sedan chair. The very first one they had ever seen. It's such a wonderful way to get around. It's a gorgeous, mine was a gorgeous red leather studded in gold and carried by two slaves. It wasn't long till a lot of you, my friends, had your own. I know that. We went right to Government House, and the acting governor accepted my husband's commission, and then we walked over to the old fort where there was a short ceremony making my husband Governor General of Florida. Then he took little Pedro into the fort and had a little ceremony officially making him a soldier and handing him over to the sergeant who would do his training. As for me, I love being in St. Augustine. There is a large Hidalgo class here that I was quickly friends with, you, my friends, and I settled in being the First Lady of Florida. As for my husband, he went right to work building the fort. He decided to use the coquina rock on Anastasia Island, and of course there were plenty of shells for lime, and he persuaded 200 Indians who only do farm work to do that heavy lifting and cutting of the rocks, bringing them on barges to St. Augustine, and also lime making. In the fort, he found 2 English prisoners. One was a good mason and the other a lime maker. And so the work began. It took a whole year to get enough rocks cut and brought and the lime made to start the fort. And that's when Manuel showed his genius again. He decided to call a meeting so the town itself could decide where the new fort would go. Would it be north or south of the old one? Now, most people like the southern one, but there was no real agreement. And so what he did is he had engineer Daza lay out both sites. And then there was no question. It had to be the northern one. Had the best view of the inlet and lots of open land around it. While on the south, a much poorer view, and you would have to get rid of a couple of streets of houses to have enough space to protect the walls of the fort. And then he went a step farther. Your husbands, my friend, who have never done any work at all other than riding horses and fighting with swords, not even in trade, he persuaded them to pick up shovels and dig the first trench for this new fort. He wanted it to be their fort. And then he went a step farther and they laid the first row of stones. He wanted everyone to know that this was their fort to protect them. Well, things went fine. I, of course, enjoyed the social life of the town, and the walls began to go up very fast. When they were 10 feet high, disaster struck. A fever swept the town, and in the same day, Engineer Daza and my husband, Manuel de Sandoya, died of that fever and were buried. As I lay on my bed, grieving, the government officials came in to start the inventory. That inventory went on around me for 3 days. Now, I understand the necessity for it. When a governor dies in office, they do what they call a residentia. They tie up his whole estate, inventory it, and then officials decide, does he owe the government money? Does the government owe him money? Did he do a good? Well, I don't need to explain it to you. You understand it. I had to sign when that inventory was done that it was our whole estate. And I did, but I gave priority to me over the crown through marriage and dowry rights, which I would prove at the proper time. And then they made me leave Government House and leave behind everything. I only took the clothes on my back, my 2 children, my 2 personal slaves. I couldn't even take money. What was I to do? And that's where all of you helped me. I always had a place to live. I always had food. You gave me loans. You have no idea how grateful I am for that. Well, as soon as a month later my 3rd child was born, I started writing letters to the Crown, telling them of my plight and my husband's death. My 3rd letter and Acting Governor Ponce's first arrived in Spain at the same time, but he forgot to attach the inventory. And so they said, there's nothing we can do until the residentia is resolved. Well, I kept writing, both there and to Spain. And finally the Crown said I could have 2,000 ducats, but it was to be paid in Mexico City. Well, when my proxy asked for that money, they said, oh no, we can't pay her because the residentia has not been resolved. And so it went. After 4 years, I applied to buy a small little farm in Indonesia, which with slaves attached would give enough income to keep me and my 3 children comfortably. Oh no, said Spain, we've already given you 2,000 ducats. Why aren't you home in Spain? And so it went, back and forth. You will not believe the number of letters and the number of proxies that I had for both courts. Even 2 governors wrote of my plight. It took 8 years to solve it, and 2 more years till I got all my estate back. And now, this happy day for me. Tomorrow, I will leave on that ship in the harbor. But I will miss you, my friends. And I want one more time to say thank you.